Works for me.
And we are live here to chat about all of the awesome TV we've watched for literally the last like month because it's been forever. I'm an entirely different person. I don't have Gina Torres behind me. I'm in a new place. It took us 57 years to figure out the tech, and by us, I mean me. Carrie and Kate are innocent. With that being said, there's a lot of news. There's a lot of news that we need to go over. Most notably, of course, the love life of the one, the only Taylor Swift. Did you all panic? Did you panic? I hope you did. Taylor Swift and Travis Kelsey are dating. Isn't it crazy, you guys, how she put him on the map? What are your thoughts?
hmm the discourse is crazy. It's fun to watch. It's almost as fun as watching the videos of the girlfriend saying that she put him on the map and the guys losing their minds.
I think it's a win for everybody. It's a win for content. It's a win for Taylor Swift, who's got a movie coming out what in a week or so. It's a
Mhm.
win for the NFL. It's a win for Travis Kelsey. I mean, the only people who are probably hating this are people who would hate like the fact that the sun came up, right? What are we doing?
It's literally just fun for everybody, weirdly stimulating the economy or something. I want to inject it directly into my veins. It's so great. I literally do not care if it's fake. Because as we talk about every other week on here, we love fictional romance. So perform, entertain me. I'm so fine with that. Yeah, something about them just like scratches an itch in all of our collective brains, and I'm obsessed. Um, there's so many rumors going around, like they're filming a Super Bowl commercial together or something like that. Was one that I saw. They have like a new press release every 30 seconds, and I can't get enough. 100 out of 10 would recommend. What other news do you guys bring to the table this week? And how are you? It's been ages.
Kicking along as an old man, doing as well as I can.
Taking along as an old man
Uh,
is crazy.
I'm good, and the news I think we all collectively bring is Only Murders in the Building has been renewed for season 4, just in time for the writer's strike to be done. Yay!
They're literally the only show that came out unscathed. And I know that's like a reductive, like not plugged in take on it, but they aired during the time that everybody was like, myself included, we're never going to have good television again forever and ever, which like may be true, whatever, I don't know. And therefore they like didn't have really a lot of competition in terms of the fall lineup. Like it was like that or Dancing with the Stars. What are you going to pick, right? Then at this point, there's still the SAG strike going on, but this is the point at which they actually need to bring their writers back to the table because they just got renewed and writers come back to the table. And most likely by the time that they would actually be filming, SAG will have reached some kind of mutually beneficial agreement where people get paid some appropriate amount to do what they do. So super
Mhm.
excited about that. What else? Any other news flying around?
Got-
Um,
mm,
I don't have any.
No, because everybody's striking, so Taylor Swift and Travis Kelsey are literally the only thing we can all lose our minds about. I'm so excited, by the way, about her movie coming out. I will be there opening night.
I hear
Eras
pre-sales
tour.
have probably broken records, so another win.
Yes. A, because it's good, and B, because we do not have any other choice. Like, it's either that or Saw 10 or whatever's in theaters right now. Like, it's just like scary movies, which doesn't generally do it for me. I really have to be like in the mood to be my most annoying self to be movie route, I will say. Right. Well, we started talking about Only Murders in the Building. That is really why we are all gathered here today. So let's just dive right into it. It's not just the finale that we just watched. Since we last spoke, the entire really back half of the season or back third of the season has occurred. So let's let's back it up. What did you think of the final back third-ish of Only Murders in the Building? And did you know it all along?
Carrie, you go first.
I thought the back third was freaking phenomenal. I will say that I feel like maybe third or fourth episode I was a little wobbly. I think like the love episode, I believe it might have been, was not one of my favorites when they were
Okay.
everyone was dating, that sort of thing. But it picked up from there. I will say this: I did not have a sort of a guess of who did it because I was always of the opinion that maybe a number of people. Well, obviously, it turned out that more than one person was involved, but I had the
Hmm.
sinking suspicion that maybe a group of people, like others, were involved. Um, so I will say there was a little itty bitty. It was emotional. I will say that it was emotional in terms of the
It
revelation
was.
for obvious reasons in terms of how it fit to the narrative. But in terms of a ooh, bam, they picked who did it. There's a little bit of a um, kind of wow. All right, where do we go from here? So it was a little bit of both. But I love the back half. It's probably been probably a handful of episodes. Probably my favorite of the series. I really liked it a lot.
Y- Yeah, I think the first half of the season is probably some of the weakest
Mm,
episodes that it's had of the series, and then the last half, specifically the last three episodes, starting with the Meryl Streep episode and then going forward, are some of the strongest episodes they've ever had.
hmm
Um, there might be some exceptions. There were some really fantastic episodes in one and two, but I
hmm
think those three as a whole told a very cohesive arc, which was beautiful. Um, I kind of from the beginning of the season saw the writing on the wall of they were going to try to pin it on Meryl Streep in the last couple episodes because it's Meryl Streep. It's she's there. She had the, the jaded but kind of maternal and kind worldview because of how much rejection she'd faced when she was younger and all this other things that kind of lead to a ooh, that seems suspicious, that seems guilty,
hmm
as well as the brother because of how clear that relationship was fraught, which to me it was clear indication that of course it's not them. um, I've read a story before. um,
I
I
believe you've
also
read 10 in the
remember.
last week.
Oh yeah. um, and the father, or not the father, the mother son duo of a different breed, with the producers of Donna and I don't even or Cliff. Uh, I didn't necessarily suspect them at the very beginning, but their intro where they kiss each other on the mouths really set me on edge, and I
Right.
was like uh uncomfortably fascinated with their characters the entire rest of the way, which is probably what brought them into sharp focus and made me realize it was them like four episodes before the end. And then every episode afterward really confirmed it for me. I was nervous that they were going to do a last minute change up and make Taubert the bad guy.
Mm.
Uh, but I'm glad because they still left him for a possible romantic interest that we actually all like for
Yeah.
Selena in next season. So that's kind of the overarching feelings I had.
He just needs a middle name or something. I can't call him by that. That just sounds stupid.
It is a truly awful name.
Hmm. I mean, they might start calling him like Toby or something, which is not, but at least it's not Taubert.
Toby is an improvement only in the most mild sense of the word improvement. Like it is empirically better, but still quite bad.
Yes.
I do like him though. I liked his character. I honestly don't know if we're just kind of like, as a collective audience, blinded by the fact that like he's really hot and they look very pretty together.
Hmm.
Because sometimes when he says things, it's like a bit much. It's just like the whole like oh, move to LA and do that. It's like this is a bit sudden. There's something going
Mhm.
on here. Like something about it I don't trust, but he's very attractive, so we like that for her. I I don't see him and her as endgame, but I am pleased that he wasn't the bad guy because I feel like that could have been almost too easy of a last minute switch. And we've already done the thing in season two where she dates a hot person, the Cara Delevingne character, and then that person turns out to be like not what they seemed, lied to her, whatever. So it was nice that they didn't kind of like repeat that specific storyline, especially for a show that's entire premise is based on like we kind of do repeat things almost in like this ridiculous suspend disbelief over the top sense. With that being said, I loved the ending, both in terms of who did it, the rationale for why they did it, and really leaning into the emotional side of things. I would say more so than season two, even. And with this show, they have sort of a easy way, easy might not be the right word, but they have an easy way to get emotion from the audience. And that is having the trio have some version of, connecting to each other, some friendship moment, some save each other's life moment, some, the uncles are being uncle-y or the fathers are being fathery type of situation. And we're like, oh, so sweet, whatever. It is really impressive that they're able to get emotion out of us over not characters of the week, but characters of the season. So I was really, I appreciated that.
Speaking of getting emotion out of people, I mean, I have to give credit, incredible credit, to Paul Rudd for drawing emotion out of a monologue to a freaking cookie. In a
Yes.
scene that includes him oinking in it, and there's like tears in my eyes. I'm like, what the holy freaking heck? And then you think that's why you bring in a Paul Rudd for this kind, because up to that point, I mean, it was sort of like in the first Scream, it's like when Drew Barrymore was there, it's like, hey, you bring in a star and then it's like you shake it up and you kill him. And it
Mhm.
sort of felt like that, but you're also thinking, well, you bring in an actor of this caliber for the star impact, but also this emotional payoff that probably very few folks could have pulled off.
Right.
So I would got to give him some credit for that.
Paul Rudd was at the Taylor Swift Travis Kelsey game. Anyone was curious.
And so was Deadpool and Wolverine, which has me
Yes.
believing that Taylor Swift is going to play Dazzler in that movie. But let's not get off track here.
They got to do something during their strike. They got to go do their greatest performance of all time, acting like they care about football.
Yeah, because the
Mhm.
cameras are there, and hey, we got to promote what we got.
That's right.
Yeah. What you kind of mentioned this too. I liked how the first two seasons, the eventual killer, it was kind of there for selfish reasons and was played off as kind of the like the snap or the insane or whatever to a point of like there's a little bit of you have to suspend disbelief. This is a little wild, and it was far more focusing on the bond of the three main characters. That bond was still present within this season, but I would say it's less so than the previous two, which is part of their story in this show or this
Hmm.
season. But it also kind of forced them to make the killer story more empathetic. It's the
Hmm.
first time that you've watched it and gone, well, I mean, no, don't do that. But you also understand it and can empathize because it was done out of a sense of love and protection rather than
Hmm.
like a lover scorned or a career based choice. So it was a new spin that I really enjoyed, and then it led into the death of Saz, who is also kind of a different kill because the previous three deaths have been characters who are quote unquote unlikable, and Saz is a unique figure, but there is a lovable side of Saz that we all kind of appreciate whenever she comes on.
Yes. I think it what you mentioned there with empathizing with the killer, we I, we as the audience, and I may be, reading too much into this, but I think we as the audience were so primed to go into this season ready to empathize with the killer because in season one and season two, they definitely had you understand the motivation of the killer, but it wasn't necessarily put them on a pedestal and root for them sort of situation. We still were rooting for our trio to get them. But by this point, we were ready for things to be, kind of shaken up in a way. But all three of us, and also many people on, like social media, whatever viewers have been talking about, like, oh, is this going to be the season that it was actually Selena's character that did it, or Martin's character that did it, or, et cetera, et cetera. And that indicates to me that we've been primed for, okay, we're going to empathize with the killer. But instead of having us empathize with the killer by giving us a killer that we're familiar with and have rooted for before, they give us a killer who has this, like, interesting and empathetic storyline and a meaningful, okay, and then somebody else is trying to protect their son, and so on. These moments that are also then echoed in this entire play that sits behind the entire season, which has no discernible plot, but is that theme. It is the theme of, protecting the child that you're nannying in a Nova Scotia lighthouse, or the triplets, or, whatever situation. So by not having the entire play have a plot, but just have that theme that just sort of like plants in our heads of, like, this is sort of what, we're trying to get across. And this is what we're trying to, my love is a lighthouse. And, I have no idea what else is going on stage. We're so ready to empathize with this absolute brat. And I did. And it was, I think, one of the most emotional finales of the season, even before we get to the Saz killing, which was like, oh my goodness, like, talk about being set up well for season 4.
Concur.
Yeah, I
I,
agree.
that ending though, that ending hit me twice because I was like, wow, are they really going to go here like with Charles, right? And I'm thinking because when I first saw him go down or her go down on the ground, I was like, there seems to have been some sort of padding in the
Mm-hmm.
shirt, and I was like, please tell me that there's like some sort of like metal or something that like deflected the bullet or something. And then when of course I realized that wasn't the case, and then so you're thinking it's Charles, and it was like there was a gut punch, and then I was like, oh, it's not Charles, it's Sass, and the emotion it still hit the freaking same, even though it's a character that's not a regular, but she's been around enough where it's like, oh, dang, that really, really freaking sucks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, it's a really good tease in the next season, man. It's like, well, where the hell are we gonna go here? Because somebody was out to get him, and we need to know who that was.
That is
Yeah.
a good question. Where do we
Well,
go from here?
I mean, the great thing, I think to be honest, they've had great setups at the end of every season, but I think this is actually their best one yet
Mm-hmm.
because, she kind of re-entered the scene as she does, just randomly showing up. And she comes to Charles and says, I have this secret to tell you. And that never spells well for the last 5 minutes of the season. So I was like, oh no, she's going to be the one that dies. Um, and it still got me that it was possibly Charles for a few seconds there. And then they did pull that one off. But I mean, I loved how on the nose, just spelling it out for we're going to be in LA, they did it. That all three of them had separate conversations that'll push them to LA for personal reasons, as well as Saz, who would be an LA actor who would have some random news to give to Charles for the LA base. Yeah, the murder happened in the building because it always has to happen within the building. But um, all their leads are probably going to lead them to an LA investigation, which is going to kind of be season four's new spin, which we previously had guessed. And I think that was actually Carey, which is an amazing guess, especially so specifically. It was great.
Down to the city.
I I should have
Yeah.
played the lottery. I still might. Um, the it just sort of felt like that's naturally where it was going to go, and I don't know what sort of like pointed me in that direction, but it just sort of felt like with this exposure, like this just feels like, hey, it's going to get bigger than this, or there's going to be a reason for that. So that was not that I thought that this is how narratively they would have gotten there. I'm going to call it now. I'm thinking that it was Scott Bakula, who the killer, because he was name dropped and he's with Joy and he's trying to get rid of the competition, so he had to take out Charles. That's my theory based on absolutely nothing. Say slightly maybe impaired. Scott Bakula did it.
You heard it here first. Let the
Mhm.
permanent record, since this, magically the tech was fixed and this is live streaming to YouTube and will live there forevermore. We have evidence. You can go back to the 20-minute mark on this live stream at any time. Very important question. Which of the Pickwick triplets did it?
That song got stuck in my head throughout
So
my
bad.
house. It's so bad.
It's genuinely a tongue twister. Try to say that question.
Which of the Pickwick
I'm not.
triplets did it? Who could have
It's
confessed
easier if
this
you
crime?
have like the music to. It's hard. Well, I can get tongue twisted over anything.
Uh,
All right.
if I had to guess, it's always the oldest. If it was a triplet that's like older than the rest of them by 30 seconds, it was the older one
Yes.
that did it. Absolutely.
If it's justifiable, it's the oldest. If it's not justifiable, it's the second. Well, let's talk about what else we watched or read or media consumed or whatever, because there is like a strike and all that going on in the last week and also like the last 4 weeks, because it's been 84 years. So, Carrie, kick us off. What did you watch?
It's been a combination of things, and I can't remember if we maybe. I think we did talk about the end of my adventures with Superman the last time we spoke. So I did finish that. I have watched all of the Ahsoka series, which has been fantastic. And here's the selling point on it: the stars of it, Rosario Dawson, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, just a bunch of women, man. And it's like, hey, it's not an agenda being pushed; it's just fantastic television. So go watch it. So I finished watching that, and I did not watch it from start to finish, but I was flipping around watching The Golden Bachelor. I already have an absolute favorite.
Okay, who's your favorite?
Uh,
Who's your favorite?
um, it was Edith, I believe is her name. She was the first. She was the
The
absolute first
first
one
one
that
out
got
of
out
the,
of.
yeah,
I was
she
like,
has like all white hair. Yes.
in that gold dress was like, oh Hollywood. I was like, I don't know why anyone else is showing up tonight.
He was
She's my
stunning.
she's my
So
woman.
good. I think if
Um,
she is not the person that he picks, he should be the first Golden Bachelorette. Because
Absolutely.
you are
Yeah.
correct. She had that presence, she had that vibe, and it wasn't like, oh, like she looked like she was 45 but was actually 65. Like she looked her age, she looked stunning for her age. Some of these women, was one in particular, because I did watch the whole thing and I'm obsessed with it. Some of these women look remarkably younger than what their age is to me, and I can't judge ages. They're all gorgeous, funny, beautiful, 10 out of 10. Like this is like cream of the crop, right? But some of them look like Edith, look gorgeous for their age, and then some of them, whether or not they're like particularly gorgeous for the age, they just simply look a lot younger than what they are. There was a dance instructor on there. She was the one that came out of the limo. Like she had like this like old curly white wig and like
The
a cane
Walker.
or whatever. And then
The
she like
Walker.
ripped it.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah, she had the
Well,
walker and
yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, she, in my opinion, looks like 42 years old or something. Like she just looks and acts like very, very young, which lovely. Like I have literally nothing bad to say about any of these women at all. But I think because men are predictable, I think there's a chance he's gonna pick one who just simply like seems like youngest of the crop, and Edith might be our next Golden Bachelorette. That's just my prediction.
Do you know what surprised me the absolute most was how emotional they got me in like the first part because I
Yes.
was sort of expecting them to sort of gloss over. essentially what got him here, right? But they
Hmm.
didn't, and that was like pretty freaking significant for a show about a guy dating a bunch of women. I was like, because I'll be honest, at the end of that, I was like, oh man, and I know it's been some time that it's happened, but I was like, holy crap, none of these women better do him wrong, man, because I'd be
Right.
upset, man. I was really surprised that they got that in depth into that story, but I think they had to.
Genuinely cried watching the opening sequence. Because if
Yeah.
you've watched The Bachelor before, the opening sequence is typically a package about The Bachelor, and you see them like getting up, working out, getting dressed. They're shirtless half the time. They're inexplicably showering outside. They're talking about how they, played pro football and then they like saved a puppy from a building and now they like sell crypto or something like that, and there's some like billionaire and they're looking for their like blonde southern belle to have 6 kids with them on a ranch. Like it's like that kind of thing, right? And it's like it's it's cute. You watch it for what it is. It's a dumb reality show, but you watch the entire package and you're like, okay, he's literally just here because he's 6'2" and attractive, like not a brain cell in sight. In this particular instance, they give little nods to the typical bachelor thing. Like you see him getting ready, buttoning up his shirt, but then you see him putting in his hearing aids. You hear him talk about his life, but he's talking about like an actual real life that he lived in which he like cared about people. And, he's not talking about his profession really. Like he, I guess, like managed restaurants or something like that, amongst his entire career, but he doesn't spend the entire time talking about like, oh, I have money and I own a house on a lake and whatever in that sort of thing is like, I'm putting myself up on a pedestal and here's why I'm such a catch and I'm still hot and play pickleball, like, whatever. It's more like you grow to emotionally care for him in the first 10 minutes. So I thought it was so smart the way they put it together. Absolutely cried, rooting for his happiness, even though I do still stand by my earlier statement. Men are predictable. He's literally just going to pick whichever one looks like the youngest and doesn't have gray hair. I don't know.
Well, let me counter that to a degree, and I hate to sort of be surface level, right? But if I remember correctly, they showed his wife, and
Hmm.
she, how do I say this without sounding callous? She wasn't a trophy wife, right?
Right. She
At
looked like a
least in
real
my estimation.
person.
Right. So, to that degree, I feel like that's where he makes his judgments in terms of people as a whole, as opposed to saying, "Hey, who looks the shiniest over here?" or that. So, I have a little bit of confidence in that, based on nothing other than that, thinking that he may make it probably will appreciate, but probably most people will not expect.
Hmm. That's a good point. His wife does look like a real woman. She's also, I can't tell exactly what she is, but she also appears to be mixed in some way. And it's not lost on me that, like, today you wouldn't bat an eye at that, but 40 something years or whatever, a white guy from Indiana, like, who looks like him getting with, somebody a slight shade darker than a piece of paper was probably, it required some level of like character on his part, I would imagine. I don't know. I wasn't around then, but.
Out of been 10.
Well, I will definitely continue watching The Golden Bachelor, and you should too. And Kate, you should too. What do you have against old people? Are you ageist, Kate?
No, I'm not ageist. I like the brain cells where they are, and I don't want to watch reality TV. And that's not to say that people that watch reality TV don't have brain cells. I just know myself, and I can't let myself enjoy happy and lighthearted things.
Okay, here's how I'll pitch it. Have you seen the movie Up? The intro to Up, where you see like this old guy like lose his wife and it's very sad.
Happy.
Okay, imagine it reversed though. It's an old guy finding love and getting very happy. Like imagine watching that in reverse. That's what we're about to see.
So,
That
He's not old, by
sounds
the way. Like, yes, he's like 71 or whatever, but he's still quite good looking and active and whatever. Like, it's not like a like watching like a sad puppy try to find love. Like, he's fine. Like you're not gonna be like, oh, boo hoo, it's old grandpa. Like
mhm.
he's still got it. Probably not to your generation.
W-
Anyways,
Watch
No,
watch the first
I've
episode. Make your. I promise you this. If you watch the first 10 minutes of the first episode, you will be intrigued. I promise.
for sure.
But
And
I
after
also
10
just
minutes, you
think of
turn
it
it
like
off.
how much like smarter and funnier and more articulate older women are.
I'm sure if I would ever watch a season, it would be The Golden Bachelor. That I totally agree with. It's far more just The Bachelor as a concept isn't really my thing, and therefore I just have no interest in watching it. Even if it's like the top quality, better version of The Bachelor, it's still the same thing.
I will collect my temporary L on this. So tell us what is your thing. Tell us about the 10 books that you read this week.
I don't know what happened. I read 10 books. I wish I could say they were short. They were not. They collectively totaled about 5,000 pages. I am not kidding.
Wow.
um, I read five Brandon Sanderson books, and I am fully committed to reading his entire collection of his main big universe now. I've read several of the series that kind of take part in that, but in the past 10 books, started reading the Starlight Archive, the main characters. There's like 9 perspective characters that you're getting the story, and that's lowballing. That is lowballing the number. Um, but there's a handful that are interesting that are the quote unquote main characters. There's Dalinar, who's a man in his 60s, I believe, who is the uncle of the king and is getting visions and is the leader of the army and is confused by these visions and is consistently uh, made fun of by all the other powerful people within the country, basically trying to oust him, kill him, etc., etc. His son, who thinks he's a playboy, has no, as the kids say, no riz whatsoever, and yet is like dating every legs. Um, there's another guy who is like the stereotypical edgelord, hates the royal line, um, becomes super powerful, becomes one of the guards to royalty, is I understand why people like him. I cannot stand him. I derogatorily think he is one of the most annoying characters I've ever read. And makes
Love
dumb
the
decisions
specification of
every page.
derogatorily on that.
Well, because I'm about to say the other character that we focus on is Shalon, and affectionately, she is the most annoying character other than him. Because she and the other female main character, Yasna, make some of the most morally questionable choices, but they have open discussions about philosophy and ethics, and it's the front facing of like, I know I'm not good and like tolerable to everybody, but I don't care. This is me, and I am the smartest person in the world. And that's their characters. They're both like that. And you know, there's something fun and interesting about characters who know they're not great, but are smart and get what they want because they do things like intelligently instead of making a mess like Kaladin does every time. Oh my gosh, the guy. Um, so I've been reading all those books. I have 2 more left. They're both well over 1,000 pages. um, Then I also read 2 memoirs. One was about an author reading more books. It was okay. It was a little pretentious, but it gave me a new reading list to add. I read a murder mystery, a biography about the Princess Spy who became a countess after World War II. And I read a cute little romance about called Out on a Limb. And then I also read Jill Duggar's memoir, which
Huh?
covered a lot of the things that I kind of brought up when I watched Shiny Happy People. It didn't really elaborate past much of that, but I kind of appreciate what she did. She really, really spelled out how much the financial abuse consistently and up until very recently was still an issue.
Mhm.
And I can also very clearly see that because she really didn't rehash anything that wasn't already publicly discussed, she saw an opportunity to tell her side of the story, process some of the trauma of going through that by writing it, and then making the money that she deserves off of the sales of this book. And then I I assume she's planning on making as much money off of this as she can and then
Mhm.
disappearing into the wind.
Yes, probably.
And I fully respect that.
Agree.
When you're reading multiple books, are you a start to finish reader, or do you like have multiple, like if it's do you have multiple tabs open at one time, if you get what I'm saying?
I I can read multiple books at one time. It gets up to maybe three. And that's more to do with I have maybe one that's in a hardback or a paperback, one that's an audiobook, and one that's an ebook, and it depends on the setting when the mood to read strikes me. But for the most part, I'm cover to cover reading one book at a time.
I'm a multi-tabber, which is why I very rarely like finish a book in a reasonable amount of time, unless it's like a junk food book that's like a fast-paced read. Otherwise, I'll just
Hmm.
like I'll go with like, oh, today I'm craving mystery, and today I'm craving this, and today I have my phone, and this is what's on that, you know. So, what about you,
I'm
Carrie?
just think I'm no, I'm just thinking about keeping up with plots, and I mean it's not like terribly difficult to do, but I actually do like the fact that you just brought up because I primarily I am a start to finish reader, but if I do have them in different mediums, that sort of makes up for it. So, like if you have an audiobook, it's like something I'm going to listen to when I'm driving to and from work or whatever the case may be, and I know I can sort of keep that separate in terms of my mind and deal with it that way, as opposed to something I may be reading on my phone or actually having the book. So in that respect, it does help sort of compartmentalize like what I'm taking in, because otherwise it would be, huh, now who did what to who again, and this, that, and the other. So yeah, I start having flashbacks of when I was in school and having to read a bunch of different things, and I don't like those dreams anymore. They're nightmares.
Mm. I Part of it also helps me because I read so many different genres. I read pretty much everything except just straight horror. I don't love that, but everything else I'll read. Uh, and that also, if I do read multiple books, that variety tends to help. Um, but I still tend to just read one book at a time, and it has far more to do with I just get really, really focused in on it. And if it's a good book, especially, I'm not reading anything else.
It's interesting you brought up horror because I don't read horror because, and this is going to sound strange, because I don't feel like I could shut my mind off to a book about horror because I'd always
Mm,
be sort of thinking about it. Now I can watch a horror movie 5 minutes before I go to sleep, never have a problem. But if I'm reading it, it requires it's a different focus, it's a different sort of way you're taking in the information. And that sort of like sticks with me a little bit more. And I don't like to read horror. I can watch it all day long. I just don't like to read it.
I, I see thriller and horror as two completely different things. I know some people see them very similar. I think they're very different. I'm
I
picky with
agree.
thrillers, but I do read them, and some of them are very, very good. I do kind of see what you mean, though, about if you're reading a thriller, that's all, you can't really turn your mind off to it. Um, but I tend to read things that I almost qualify as like a funny thriller, where there's a
Mm.
thriller element to it, but it's almost serving as a parody. I don't know. But I don't read or watch horror movies because I don't really find them that entertaining or scary. If I found them scary, I would actually probably like them more. I just find them bland. I wish I liked them, but I just can't get into any of it. So movies or books that are in that genre, nothing really does that for me.
That's fair because I'll be honest, in terms of horror, and I was having a conversation with somebody about this a little while ago. It's like it's really, really difficult to pull off a horror movie because no one's afraid of anything anymore because of the
Hmm.
world we live in. It's like, no, that's not scary. My Monday is freaking scary, right? So how are you going to scare me? Um, so most of the things that are scary to me are things that were scary to me like when you were younger, right? Because that's sort
Hmm.
of the way you took it in and that's your recollection of it. But in terms of like new horror, it's usually what you appreciate is whether it's a parody of that horror or a satire of that horror, not the actual horror itself.
Hmm.
Um,
Mm.
I do kind of get genuinely startled at like horror or scary movies, I would say, but I think it's almost more like an unsettling, or I don't always enjoy it, or I feel like the need to like they are trying to elicit fear and I feel the need to like offer fear in response. In the same way that if you're like watching a movie that's asking you to suspend disbelief, I at least attempt to suspend disbelief. Or if you're watching something that's supposed to be romantic, I attempt to like, okay, even though this is toxic or this is trash or this person can't act, or because like I've watched a lot of bottom of the barrel stuff, right? You at least I don't know. I think it's like I feel obligated as a viewer to try to get into it. And therefore I don't watch a lot of horror because I feel obligated to be scared. And I will like temporarily get scared. Does that make sense? That's turned into group therapy.
It
if
it
if
it makes
go ahead.
sense, and it put into frame something that I had never fully conceptualized. And I think this is the big difference between how me and you both watch things. I actively refuse. I refuse to give you any leeway. You have to earn it. So I refuse to respond scared. That's where I find them boring, is because I know it's fake. I know what like how the music of a film score works. I know when it drops out that you're about to try to jump scare me. I know how those things work. So try harder. And same things with like the suspend disbelief or romances. You have to earn it from me. And so that I had never thought about it that way. And I think that's genuinely where most of our differences in viewing habits lie. I think that's very interesting.
I can sort of see both sides of it. To Cammie's point, I sort of feel like if you're going something, then that's half the battle, right? Because you're sort of expecting to be entertained. At least that's sort of the approach that I take. I will say, and I can't remember how long ago this movie came out, and there's obviously a supernatural aspect to the horror and thriller part of it, but The Others, if you remember that with Nicole
Mm-mm.
Kidman, if I remember correctly, came out. And it feels like it came out forever ago, but it's probably more recent horror than anything that I've seen. And I remember how really, really good that was. But based on the narrative and what happened in it, it's one of those movies that you're only going you no, you'll watch it twice. You watch it the first time and then you're totally freaking freaked out by the story that they were able to tell and the twist that they were able to provide. And then you'll watch it the second time to see if those are things you could pick up on, right? But then you'll never watch it again. Whereas a comedy, you could probably watch a comedy again, even though you know all the jokes. You can watch an action movie, even though you know all the action points. But sort of a horror movie is like once you've experienced that, then do you need to watch it again? And that's sort of the disposable nature of horror movies, but it's also sort of like why, unless it's just a slasher movie, why you're not really going to have a bunch of sequels and stuff like that. So they're harder to do, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, it's timely to unpack our horror movie habits as we have just entered the month of October, spooky season. My idea of a spooky movie will be on Friday the 13th, watching the Eras Tour movie. We already talked about The Golden Bachelor, which is fantastic. Highly recommend. Everybody should watch it. It's a straight shot of serotonin, similar to the 24/7 media cycle surrounding Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift, which is really the primary thing that I've watched for the past, I guess, about 2 weeks now. Wheel of Time is ongoing, and we'll talk a little bit more about it next week because I know we're past time right now. But I have been enjoying this. current second season of Wheel of Time. It's been really interesting to see what they have kind of kept in terms of themes and tones from season one and where they've kind of diverged. My very predictable take back in season one was complaining that the main special chosen boy was like just too prominent and took up too much screen time, and it bored me to tears, and I cared much more about all of the other side characters than him. And in this season I feel like we have got a little less of him, and also he's been paired off frequently thus far with a slightly villainousy anti-hero woman. I don't think she's done anything bad ever, and I don't think she's a villain, but she is uh like serial killer for the past several hundred years. So I guess there's that. But other than that, she's never really done anything wrong. So that's kind of made him like slightly more interesting just through like literal osmosis. There was one episode that centered around one of the like women in his little friend group. So he had like two friends. One of them is like, the wolf archetype or something, I think is like his whole thing. The other one is like the trickster thief archetype is his whole thing. And then because the author of this show needs therapy, the only woman in the group is essentially like a mother archetype, but she is young. She's younger than them. Again, he needs therapy. So she is eventually, spoilers if you read the book, I guess I didn't read them, but I have like a easy source to all spoilers that I want. She becomes sort of like this like mother superior person by the end of it, and she's like the matriarch of all things, ruler of all, whatever. Lovely, 10 out of 10. At this point she's not like, she barely has powers, and there's this episode that centers around her where she's been like captured. She's basically a slave. Recall that like the author needs some serious help. I think he's dead actually, so maybe I shouldn't speak ill of that. Anyways, he needs serious help. He wonderful. I mean, like bad, but whatever. Vanessa Hudgens voice, like people are gonna die. Anyways, she is like captured or whatever, and she's like trying to break free from like this mental torture or whatever. The actress playing her up until this point, I was like, she's fine, like she's good, whatever. She was phenomenal in this episode, jaw on the floor. She was so good. There were like several things that were like a high emotion, high physicality thing that she had to like play and do. So good. Has been the highlight of the season so far. I think we've got like a couple episodes left to go. I'm one episode behind. I'll probably marathon like the last two back to back, but do recommend. And there's like these fantasy spooky elements. It's a good October watch if you're curious. Thank you for staying 12 minutes over with me. I appreciate it since we got a late start. That'll never, ever happen again. I promise. Next show will be on the 18th, so in 2 weeks. Loki is coming back. Love is Blind will end. That's currently dropping on Netflix right now if you need more crap reality dating. And by then, Taylor Swift will probably have bought the NFL. So join us for that in 2 weeks. Any final thoughts?
If you really like the best thing about The Flash being Jesse Martin, he's on a show now called The Irrational, and I forget which network it's on. I want to say ABC, but I could be wrong. I've seen the pilot. It seems interesting. He's not playing a cop. He's playing sort of cop adjacent. So Jesse L.
Okay.
Martin, give him a watch. The Irrational.
What's it about? Like, what's the plot?
He's like this psych professor who was traumatized by this incident that happened to him when he was younger, and he's having a difficult time trying to remember exactly what happened. And because he can't, that means that like a killer could very well be let loose. That's sort of part of it. But the gist of it is he's sort of helping law enforcement with cases and that sort of thing that deal with sort of people's irrational sort of activity, and he's trying to help make sense of what appears to be irrational type behavior and those sorts of things. And I know I'm probably not explaining it the best way because I've only seen like the first episode, but it's
I'm
interesting, and
literally
it's
going to
Jesse L.
add it
Martin.
as we speak. It sounds fantastic.
Yeah,
Mhm.
freaking
Adding
Joe
it to
West.
my
That's the
TV
best
app.
thing about Flash. Good deal.
speaking of actors that we've previously both all three loved, or I think all three of us, Ian DeCasticker from Agents of Shield fame was cast as King Arthur. I mean, I've talked about this previously, but I hadn't paid for that subscription because I was going to binge it all in one week on a free subscription trial. So I think that that is almost done for that first season. So it's prime time for me to binge it. If anybody else is interested in that.
Yes, do want
Which service is it on?
the Apple.
MGM.
Didn't even know they had a streaming service.
Neither did I until I went to go watch it, found out I had never heard of this before.
I recently realized I forgot to cancel my Apple subscription that I temporarily put into place to watch Severance. So now I need to go back in and binge anything I wanted off of Apple and then cancel that because down with Apple.
I need to go through, I need to watch Severance, and I also need to go and watch Dickinson
Yeah,
because
I
I
think that
can't
was one that I wanted to
believe I've
watch on
never
there.
watched that.
I was gonna watch that one show, Ted Lasso or whatever, because like everybody was like nutting over it
Hmm.
there for a while. But then I hear that like main romance that people were interested in ended like crap when the show ended or whatever. And I don't know if they're getting another season, but just like in general, like apparently they're going through like a, you know, the romance everybody wants isn't happening. So I'm not gonna do it until I have some guarantee that it's not just going to like draw me in and spit in my face. I've done my time in the trenches.
That's fair.
Um, okay, now we're 15 minutes over. So sorry, but I had a blast. I will
Mhm.
see you all in 2 weeks. And we're never having tech issues ever again. I promise, because I solved it forever.
Until the next
Bye.
time.
Until the
Bye.
next time.